We only have a few books to go, folks, and we are in the book of Esther, and this is an awesome one. I didn't say it. I didn't say what's going on, my Bible in 365 brothers and sisters. I kind of said it out of order, but you know what? Hey, let me tell you something. I'm excited. The book of Esther is an incredible book. By the way, we call the book of Esther a post-exilic book. By post-exilic, we mean after the exile, and the exile that we are talking about is the first of three that took place by Nebuchadnezzar against the southern kingdom of Judah. Remember, there were three that happened. We had the first one in 605 BC. This was the one in which Daniel was taken away in. We had the second one that took place, and that was in 595 BC. That would have been the exile in which Ezekiel was taken away in, and the third one would have been in 586 BC, and this would have been the one in which all of Jerusalem was destroyed. It's where the temple was destroyed, specifically on the 9th of Av, 586 BC, and roughly 500,000 men, women, and children were murdered in Jerusalem. And folks, it was a terrible, terrible, terrible day. It's interesting. The 9th of Av has a very spooky kind of a trail that it follows, because the 9th of Av happens to be the same date in 70 AD that Herod's temple was destroyed by Titus. And there's a lot of other weird things that happen on the 9th of Av, but that's a whole other story, something you can look up. It's a pretty amazing picture that is drawn for us. Now, I want to say this because it's important. When we look at a post-exilic book like the book of Esther, perhaps some of the most incredibly important variables that exist within the documentation after the exile can be found in the story of Esther. Now, there's a couple things you might not know. Like, number one, you will not see a mention of the word God at all in the book of Esther, yet God is all over that book, right? The other thing that's really important about Esther is Esther documents the very holiday that so many people all over the world celebrate. It is called Purim. And this is, of course, a celebration where people take the time to recognize the extraordinary thing that Esther did in saving a whole nation from complete destruction. And what is so unique and so powerful about the story of Esther is to see how open that woman was to be used by God under the rule of a pagan king. And she was, for such a time as this, used in a mighty, powerful, and great way. Now, I want you to understand something, and this is really critical because this is going to be a very short review. If there is anything you want to associate with the book of Esther, associate this phrase, for such a time as this. God has called each and every single one of you for such a time as this to be used by him greatly, to save a whole nation and generation of people. Guys, speak up. Now is the time to speak up. Now is the time to stand for righteousness. Now is the time to be used by God to accomplish and do great things. And perhaps the story of Esther is one of the most markedly important stories in the Bible, because it shows how God took a series of not only sinful patterns, but tragic patterns that took place prior to the time of Esther to bring Esther into the picture, and then eventually to put Esther up in a very powerful position to be used by God to save a whole generation and to save a whole people. This stuff is awesome, you guys. It is very, very important. Keep your eyes very closely attached to this story. Keep your heart open and ask God how he might use you for such a time as this. Esther's a great book, folks. You don't want to miss it. And by the way, it is undoubtedly a soap opera type of a book. It is a novella type of a book. It is a type of book that you don't want to put down until you read it from cover to cover, because the stories are fantastic. All right? So follow it closely, and ask God how he might use you for such a time as this. God bless you guys.